Well, there is a geopolitical turn happening in the world at the moment. You have Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and then we're seeing Chinese aggression, which is in particular affecting India. Former Foreign Secretary Shyam Saran is out with a new book, How China Sees the World. It has just been launched today and is an important insight into how we can understand China's goals of dominance, of world dominance, and particularly with the problems that we are having with China, how we can deal with this as we move forward. Mr. Saran joining us now on NDTV. Thank you very much, Mr. Saran, for joining us. We're seeing a more aggressive and more assertive China today, and in your book, you've traced this to changes in the global order in the last few years, such as Trump's election and the chaos that followed, the fragmentation of the West during Brexit. As you said, China's no longer defensive about its communist ideology or that it's an authoritarian state.
So what I have said in the book is that the change really came about around the time of the global financial and economic crisis of 2007-2008. In the aftermath of the crisis, there were two trends which became very apparent. One was that the gap between China and the US as the most important economic as well as technological superpower, that gap started shrinking. Because China continued to grow at the rate of about 6% per annum after that crisis, while the US and the West in general continue to be beset with the economic crisis. On the other hand, the gap between India and China, which before the global financial economic crisis was actually shrinking. If you recall, the period, say, between 2003 and 2007, India was being actually touted as the new China. The whole concept of the BRICS came in, that these were going to be the very influential economic powers, emerging powers in the future. So the gap between India and China started expanding precisely at a time when the gap between China and the US started shrinking. And this dramatically changed the geopolitical situation, certainly from the perspective of India. And China began to see the emerging geopolitical landscape as an era of new opportunity for China. That China was now in a position really to begin to write the rules of the game. No longer was it necessary for China really to acquire to Western domination.
Well, related to that, Mr. Saran, you've also talked about how China has set itself deadlines to achieve global dominance, for example, in high-tech industries, and that Chinese leaders see the next 30 years as critical to the emergence of China as the world's most powerful country. Tell us more about that.
So they have the, China 2025 plan, which essentially has set out various targets for China to make progress in some key, areas of high technology, whether it is artificial intelligence, machine learning, information technology, aerospace, all the key areas which are high-tech areas. These are the ones which have been chosen for China to make a special effort to emerge amongst the front-ranking powers of the world. And as you know, today China, it is believed that is even ahead of the United States as far as, say, artificial intelligence is concerned. Take the face recognition technology, which they have been using, for example, in Xinjiang. It is much more advanced than what any other country has. So yes, it has set for itself a goal of emerging as the dominant power economically, militarily, as well as technologically.
There's also the issue of Xi Jinping's style of functioning, where he's deviated from Deng Xiaoping's policies. He's made the party, he's made himself the front and center of everything, essentially consciously building up a personality cult. So how much of a factor is that in how he looks at the world?
Well, every leader, and particularly a strong leader like Xi Jinping, would obviously make a difference in terms of the orientation of the country. But I would also caution in ascribing everything that is happening in China today as if this was only because of Xi Jinping and the style of leadership that you were talking about. Because, throughout history, and this is what I think the book also tries to project, that throughout history in China, there has been a preference for a strong central authority, a preference for a strong leadership, because it is in periods of strong leadership, strong central authority, that, there has been peace across the realm, there has been economic prosperity. It is when the center has been weak, leadership has been weak, that China has been fragmented and there has been economic distress. So overall, there is a kind of a preference for a strong leadership. And I think Xi Jinping has been able to tap into that we are living through a very, very, like he says, we are living through an era where we have not seen changes for almost like a century. This is an era of very, very transformational change. And in order to help the country to navigate this very, very complex kind of a geopolitical landscape that we are confronting, it is extremely important that we should have a strong leadership. So there is a certain, I would say, a broad consensus behind the idea of having a strong leader.
What can India do regarding the standoff on the LAC, Mr. Saran? The government is not as vocal on this issue as it is with, say, friction with Pakistan. Is this the right approach that India is adopting?
I think we have to recognize that as far as I mentioned right in the beginning, that there is a rather large gap in terms of our economic and military capabilities. As far as, say, border infrastructure is concerned, although we have made several improvements in the recent past, the Chinese have done much better on their side. So even there, you can see a certain asymmetry. And whether we like it or not, we have to deal with that asymmetry. So to the extent that we have managed by a fairly, strong response to prevent any further ingress, yes, we have been able to, keep the Chinese at bay. But, it is a different matter altogether if we want to actually reverse some of the gains that the Chinese have made on the border. That would require a kind of a capability that I'm afraid at this particular point of time, I do not think that we possess. But yes, it is true that I think in terms of, matching deployment at the border, improving our intelligence in terms of, surveillance of what is happening at the border, I think there has been constant improvement. And therefore, the situation at the border is not as imbalanced as perhaps it was, some time ago.
We're also seeing China's economy slowing down. Its population is aging. There are strong headwinds in its rise to becoming the global world power that it wants to be. But India is in the opposite position, although we have our own economic headwinds. But is that something that India can use to its advantage in the next few years?
So I have argued that, we should really try to take advantage of what today is a time of geopolitical advantage for India, particularly after the outbreak of the Ukraine war. Because if the West is looking at what going forward is going to be the major threat that they are going to face, it is a Russia, but more importantly, combined together with China. After all, February 4 this year, you had the Sino-Russian joint declaration, which is actually quite dramatic in terms of what it suggests as the two powers working together. So I think there is an interest which countries of the West, whether it is the United States, Western Europe, Japan, who see India as perhaps the only credible countervailing power against China. And therefore, there is an interest in building up the capabilities of India. So for us, the best strategy is to try and take advantage of this geopolitical moment and bring about a transformation of India, because that is what we are looking for. After all, whether it is our diplomatic strategy or whether it is our overall national strategy, it is to bring about a transformation of India in terms of its economy, in terms of its technology. And today, despite the fact that the United States or Western Europe or Japan are seen in somewhat relative decline, they still continue to be the repositories of sophisticated technology, of capital, both of which India needs. So if we can create the right kind of environment and take advantage of what can be on offer with regard to technology and capital, this can be very helpful in transforming India and helping India in that way of actually being able to confront China more efficiently than it has so far.
You said that India has a better chance of meeting the China challenge by remaining committed to the values of our constitution, upholding democracy, celebrating our vibrant plural culture and diversity. But we seem to be doing the opposite at the moment. Why is this so important?
Oh, because, I have argued again and again that, it is not that India should become more like China. India should become more India. That is, I think, what we require. And really, the source of our influence, the source of our international, status that we enjoy is precisely because we are seen as a country which has been incredibly successful in managing what is immense diversity. And if we are living in a globalized world, which are the countries which are likely to succeed? They are countries which have, like India, a much more cosmopolitan spirit. A country which has much more openness. And this has been actually, traditionally what India has been about. It has had a history of, being open to the rest of the world. Maybe through aggression, maybe through invasions, trade or migration. But, India has always been very, very open, and it has become a country which is really the great advantage, the great asset it has is its plurality. And I think that is what you should leverage. That is what you should work on. So to that extent, I think remaining true to our constitution, to the constitutional principles that we have, that I think is going to be an important component of any strategy of bringing about that transformation of India that I was talking about.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Shyam Saran. Thank you for joining us. How China Sees India and the World. That is the name of the book. Thank you for joining us.